On November 19th, 2025, just off the coast of Scotland, a British pilot is flying an aircraft worth around $200 million when everything changes in an instant. A sudden burst of intense green light floods the cockpit. Vision is disrupted, orientation is lost, and within seconds the entire crew is pushed toward a life-or-death situation above the freezing waters of the North Sea. Down below, in the darkness, on the deck of the Russian vessel Yantar, someone may have believed that this display of force gave them the upper hand. But that assumption was a serious mistake. The laser did not drive anyone away. Instead, it was more like switching on a beacon in the wilderness and revealing your exact position to those already watching. And this time, the response came in the form of a coordinated US Navy operation that Moscow did not anticipate. Now look at the location. Yantar was operating here, inside the UK's exclusive economic zone, about 45 miles off the coast of Scotland. This area is far more than open water. It is one of the most critical crossroads of the global internet, where major undersea cables such as TAT-3 and Atlantic Crossing 1 pass along the seabed. Think about what that really means. Around 97% of financial transactions, business communications, and even the video being watched right now depend on fiber optic cables resting silently on the ocean floor in regions like this. If those lines are severed, the consequences would be immediate and enormous. Supply chains could freeze, payment systems could fail, and financial markets across the West could face serious disruption. This is not just another patch of sea, it is one of the central switch points of the Western economy. As for Yantar, officially known as Project 2010, Moscow describes ships like this as oceanographic research vessels. It sounds harmless, even elegant. But in NATO terms, that label is widely understood as a cover for a surveillance platform with the potential to target undersea infrastructure. Yantar belongs to the Main Directorate of Deep Sea Research, an organization built to collect intelligence and prepare for underwater sabotage missions in wartime. The ship is equipped with multi-frequency sonar, seismic systems, and most importantly, two deep-diving submersibles, the AS-37 Rus and the AS-39 Consul. These vehicles can descend to depths of 6,000 meters. Their robotic arms were not built for scientific curiosity alone. They are capable of reaching, gripping, and potentially damaging critical undersea cables. From a legal standpoint, Yantar had the right to be in those waters. But by that night, the UK was no longer treating Yantar as a question mark. It was already seen as a serious concern, and that judgment came from the ship's long and troubling record. Yantar had built a reputation long before this incident. It was seen near the Nord Stream pipeline shortly before the 2022 blasts. Throughout 2023 and 2024, it was repeatedly observed operating close to submarine cables in the Atlantic. And this was already the second time that year the vessel had appeared in British waters. The growing concern was hard to ignore. British officials believed this could be part of a broader Kremlin effort to identify and map the key underwater cables and pipelines linking the UK to the outside world. The objective seemed obvious: locate the most vulnerable points in case of a future conflict. What happened that night only made those suspicions stronger. Since early November, Yantar had switched off its Automatic Identification System, or AIS, while leaving its maritime radar active. For anyone unfamiliar, AIS is essentially a vessel's electronic ID signal, the maritime equivalent of a license plate. Civilian ships rely on it to avoid collisions. For commercial traffic, disabling it is against the rules. For military vessels, doing so sends a very different message. We do not want to be tracked. But the real warning sign was not just the missing AIS signal. It was the way the ship was moving. Even with AIS turned off, Yantar continued advancing in a slow zigzag pattern at roughly 3 to 5 knots. In naval terms, that kind of movement strongly suggests seabed scanning. That tactic might confuse nearby merchant traffic, but it does not fool an RAF-P-8A Poseidon. The aircraft's AN/APY-10 radar can detect metal structures and wave patterns regardless of darkness. Its systems quickly matched what the radar could see against the missing AIS signal. A vessel was clearly there, but it was choosing not to identify itself. Picture a dark truck rolling through an upscale neighborhood at 2 in the morning, headlights off, plates hidden. You do not need to be a detective to sense that something is wrong. It is not there for a routine stop. It is there for something else. The threat was recognized immediately. The P-8A issued an alert and dropped lower to gather confirmation. Using electronic support measures along with synthetic aperture radar and infrared sensors, the aircraft scanned the sea surface in detail. Even in near-total darkness, the crew picked up unusual water movement and heat traces consistent with a submersible briefly surfacing. The moment lasted only seconds, but it was enough to confirm suspicious reconnaissance activity. And then came the reaction. Once the Russians realized the British aircraft had them in sight, they responded fast. Defensive systems were activated, including an optical dazzler, and it was aimed directly at the cockpit. The instant they switched that radar on, they gave themselves away. In the quiet of the electromagnetic spectrum, it was like a sudden shout in a silent room. High above, at 35,000 feet, another U.S. Navy P-8A was already listening. This aircraft was not there for visuals. It was a specialized signals intelligence platform operating in near-total radio silence. Its AN/ALQ-240 system did not react by interfering right away. Instead, it behaved like a forensic recorder, capturing the radar's unique electronic signature in real time. Frequency, pulse pattern, bandwidth, the full technical profile. Link 16 could provide the location, but this electronic support data provided something even more valuable: the means to understand exactly how to counter the system. The Russians likely believed they had bought themselves a brief window to get their submersible into the water unnoticed. In reality, they had just revealed the exact details NATO needed to track and contain the threat. Now the AS-37 was in the water, and Yantar's captain was waiting, convinced the sky had gone quiet. That is when the U.S. shifted from detection to pressure. The Navy P-8, still concealed in the darkness, transmitted a narrow radar pulse that imitated a targeting lock directly into the area. It was not an attack, it was a signal, a warning. In military terms, it was the equivalent of a deliberate tap on the shoulder in the dark. We see you. The Russian captain understood the message immediately. He knew his position had been exposed, so he moved to a familiar deception tactic: divide the target picture. Yantar shut down its radar to disappear electronically, and at nearly the same moment, the AS-37 released an acoustic decoy. The false contact copied engine noise and drifted west, while the real submersible quietly moved east. It was a classic distraction, meant to pull attention toward the wrong contact. Russia was counting on the Americans to follow the decoy, but below the surface, the USS Indiana was not fooled. Crews aboard Virginia-class submarines are trained to separate genuine threats from background noise with extraordinary precision. They ignored the decoy completely. Instead of rushing forward, Indiana carried out a reverse-track maneuver. Picture a player feinting one direction, drawing attention there, then instantly turning and slipping in behind the defense. That is essentially what happened underwater. While Russian sonar focused ahead, the American submarine moved into a blind zone roughly 900 yards off Yantar's stern. At that point, the balance had completely changed. The Russians believed they were still in control of the encounter, but they were already being outmaneuvered. They thought they were tracking the situation. In reality, they had already been boxed in, and the response was about to begin. What followed was a cold, highly calculated three-layer response. The first step was cutting communication. The AS-37 submersible depended on hydroacoustic guidance from the mothership to operate accurately underwater. That is when the US P-8 launched active electronic warfare. Using advanced frequency-hopping technology, the Americans flooded the exact Russian communication channel with intense interference. Picture the Russian crew trying to pass quiet instructions to the sub while someone blasts overwhelming noise straight into the line. That was the effect. Communication collapsed. On Yantar's screens, the sub's telemetry disappeared and was replaced by error messages. In an instant, the AS-37 was effectively cut off, drifting in the dark water without a clear sense of its position relative to either the target area or the mothership. At that moment, the mission was no longer in control. Then came the final psychological strike. While the Russians were still scrambling to understand the loss of contact, the USS Indiana made its presence known. From a position close off Yantar's stern, the American submarine sent out a single active sonar pulse. One ping, short, sharp, impossible to misread. For the crew aboard Yantar, that sound said everything. The threat was not somewhere over the horizon. It was right there, directly beneath them. The realization must have been immediate and chilling. At the same time, the British P-8, with visibility restored, came back around and illuminated the area with radar and searchlights, sweeping over the Russian ship from above. The signal to Moscow could not have been clearer. Your submersible is cut off, your vessel is exposed, and you are being watched from both the air and below the surface. The Russian captain understood exactly what that meant. The operation had failed. No missiles, no exchange of fire, no dramatic explosion, yet the result was decisive. NATO had outmatched the entire move through coordination, timing, and total information awareness. The order was given to recover the submersible immediately. Yantar then turned north and headed away, leaving the area in full retreat. The final moments of that night looked like a complete reversal of confidence. On Allied sensor displays, Yantar's crew could be seen urgently recovering the AS-37 onto the deck, rushing to end an operation that had clearly unraveled. The lasers were silent now. The ship changed course and headed north. Above it, British and American P-8 aircraft flew in close coordination, escorting the unwanted visitor out of the UK's exclusive economic zone. No shot was fired, but the outcome was unmistakable. It was a major operational win. The deeper lesson was the collapse of force-based thinking against information-based strategy. Russia arrived with a 20th century tool, the laser. Loud, aggressive, intimidating, designed to shock and disrupt. The assumption was simple: blind the pilot, gain the advantage. But the response came with the 21st century approach: multi-domain integration. Modern forces do not rely on eyesight alone. They track through the electromagnetic spectrum, listen through sonar, and coordinate through data in real time. A pilot's vision can be disrupted for a moment, but hiding from a fully connected sensor network is a different challenge entirely. While Russia tried to play a traditional game of pursuit and deception, the US and its allies turned the surrounding ocean into a monitored digital battle space. That night proved a larger point. In modern conflict, the side that controls information often controls the entire situation. This encounter was about more than protecting a single cable route. It was a reminder that the critical links supporting the Western economy are not left unguarded. They are watched over by some of the most capable and hardest to detect forces operating anywhere in the world. So here is the real question. After a setback like this, would Russia risk returning to these waters again? And if a future encounter involved a true attack submarine instead of a surveillance vessel, should the response remain measured or should it become far more direct? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this analysis, like the video and subscribe for more military stories and strategic breakdowns. See you in the next one.